National Fishermen and Pacific Marine Expo are proud supporters of the Galley Stories podcast, as we make similar efforts to highlight the people and topics that define commercial fishing. You can see what that looks like in print and online all year long, as well as every November in Seattle when this community comes together at PME. Check out nationalfisherman.com and pacificmarineexpo.com to learn more.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Alaska Brewing Company out of Juneau, Alaska. Go check out their new Wild Nest beer. Launched on March 1st, any place that you got a good retailer near you or your favorite watering hole. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond, hosted by Mark Kaler. My name is Penka Jane, podcast deckhand and longtime listener. We'd thank you to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Here's today's catch.
Hello and welcome to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler. And today we have Captain Brad Angasan with us here today. How are you, Brad?
Fantastic, thank you.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
You got it.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Your wife taught me.
Okay.
So, Brad, where were you born and what was your first commercial fishing experience?
I was actually born in Cannery Hospital in Dillingham. I was raised in South Naknek up until 1975, and we moved out to Anchorage for employment purposes. My father had begun work for the Native Corporation in Anchorage, and between 75 to present, or at least during my formative years, my schooling years, I sort of enjoyed the best of both worlds. I got to come home during the summer and fall months for commercial fishing and subsistence, and sort of rebonded with my grassroots. And then I'd go back to Anchorage and during the winter months would attend the Anchorage School District school system. That's really how I spent most of my younger years. And when I hit college, I went off to college. I came back. I went to work for a cannery in South Naknek. I did beach gang work there for a number of years, formed some really solid bonds with many people who are still around, still working for that cannery. And I've actually began commercial fishing as a paid crewman when I was about 5 years old, set netting in South Naknek on South Naknek Beach with my grandmother, Vera Angasan. And back then it was a totally different set net fishery.
Tell us how it worked.
Well, my grandmother, she had a sort of an army of us youngsters to do all the work. And I remember when I actually began working for her, my job was really to haul the fish from the water line up to the barrel, a wash barrel, clean the fish, the sand off the fish, and cover it up with a tarp. And a fish truck would come down and pew fish from the beach into the truck, and we got paid by the fish. And that's how I remember really engaging in the fishery as a youngster. At about 12 years old, my father recruited me to come join his fishing operation, his drift boat operation. And that's really where my experience on the water began. I had gone out with my father as a child. I think the youngest that I am told, my parents tell me, I was about 3 years old. My mom and dad would go out in a little Columbia River bow picker, Bumblebee Seafoods, which is no longer there, had company boats, and we. My father had one of their bow pickers, and we'd go out as a family, and it was just my mom and dad, myself. My dad. The joke was my dad tied me to the cabin, because those weren't exactly safe boats. There's a little dink cabin and kind of a deck to work from, and then a fish well in the bow, which was very small. It wasn't nothing like the bow pickers that they have now. Basically, there were converted sailboats with stern end cut and squared off, and a little cabin put in the back, and that was just that was really the culmination or the start of my experience here in Bristol Bay. South Naknek was a totally different place as a child growing up. The town now is actually shrunk. It's very sad to see how small it's become. I think there's about 30 people there year round now, more or less. And as a child, I can remember, the village was alive. There was the sound of people going up and down the road on their three-wheelers and their four-wheelers, the sound of cannery vehicles. There were 5 operating canneries there. Well, not canneries, but plants, from upriver to downriver. And it really was, it was a living, breathing thing. I just remember walking through the old Alaska Packers cannery, the smelling the bakery. And I remember, Frank and Devona, who, were part of the cannery then, the part of the cannery crew, and Devona was the baker. And one of the most memorable, most amazing, most vivid memories ever, walking through the cannery and getting that smell of fresh maple bars being baked in the bakery. Just things like that. Those are my fondest memories. As a child, my grandmother worked in the laundry, and in the laundry there was this big wooden wash barrel. It literally was a giant barrel, and she would fill it up with water, and us grandkids would come down and we would get to swim in it. It was like a giant hot tub. Yeah, that was a thrill of my grandmother working there in the cannery. And she worked there for 40 years.
Sounds like your family's been involved in fishing for a long time.
Long time, many years. Yeah. This is my 30th season as a captain here in Bristol Bay. 52 years old. I've done this my entire life. I don't know any other lifestyle. It's a family-run operation. I own and operate the fishing vessel Novarupta. It's a 2020 build, and God willing, my son will take over the reins one day, and he will operate that boat just as I took over for my father's operation. When he pulled out back in 1992 or so.
Does your son fish with you now?
He does. Yeah, he's a merchant marine. Because he grew up on the water, he knew early on that the ocean life was for him. So he began work. He's now working guiding tankers into Valdez Sound with a big company down there, and his work is primarily in Alaska, but it's all over the world.
But he takes vacation and comes and works with Dad.
He does. Yeah, he gets 28 days on and 28 days off, and he reminds me all the time that, hey man, time is short here, so we're here to do business.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, and go ahead. Anyway, the kid's 23 years old, and he's excuse the expression, he's full of piss and vinegar. He's eager, he's hungry, and I remember that same element of anticipation when I was with my father. My dad had made it really clear to me that there would be the passing of the reins, and that I would be the one that would take it over. And when I first got that taste of that, I was about 17, 18 years old, and my father transferred the permit over to me to run his boat because he was tired. He wanted out. He wanted to go back home. He had to go back to a real job, and he let myself and my cousin Robert take over and do fall fishing, and we were just playing around, but really valuable lessons, going out there, learning the environment. The Kvichak is a massive bay, and a lot can go wrong there, especially in the bars and in the shallows, and Robbie and I, our first couple of years playing around together, just really took it very seriously, and it's obviously nothing that you should mess around with if you're inexperienced. You shouldn't be over in those kind of waters if you don't know what you're doing.
It feels like we lose quite a bit of people up here, or boats for sure.
Yeah.
This river, these rivers are unforgiving.
Absolutely.
The tide table is. We look outside right now and we see sand across the the river. And then tonight there's going to be 26 feet of water.
That's
in it.
amazing. Yeah, that's going to be a 4-knot tide. Yeah, and that, you know, you get in the water and yeah, that's a really scary thing. I've fallen over before, and out in front of the South Naknek cannery there, and gosh, I think it was about 17 or 18 years old. I was going from the skiff onto the boat, and somehow the skiff drifted away from the boat, and here I was like kind of like spanning between the skiff and the boat, stretched out, and next thing I know, I was looking up, and there was sky from beneath the water, and I could see the silhouette of people looking in the water from up above, and it was just it couldn't have been more than 30 seconds, but I'll tell you what, that was an eternity of being underwater, looking up, seeing people look down, looking for you. As crazy it sounds, it was rather serene, but when I got out of the water, it was a mess.
Was the tide moving, or?
Yeah, tide was going out, and it just so happened that I would say it was pretty close to slack low, but you know how the ebb here, it's pretty swift up until slack water. So it was still bucking out pretty quick, and
you got right back out.
Oh, I got right back out. My family, my cousin Rob, my uncle Ted. Gosh, there were 3 other people there, and they hoisted this 250-pound kid out of the water, and that's like 500 pounds of dead weight right there.
Did you have rain gear on and boots?
I had the boots on and sweatpants. I just gone up to take a shower, and I was headed back out with the boat. And when I got aboard the boat, I looked at my cousin Rob and says, "Hey, Robbie, don't tell Dad. I'm gonna get I thought I was gonna get in real big trouble. I didn't know this, but he was on the bank watching this unfold. So as emotionally wrecked as I was coming out of the water, he was racked watching it happen.
Yeah.
So
well, that's gonna lead us into another question, which is, what has been your scariest experience on the water?
I would say, gosh, this had to be 1988, 87 or so. We were fishing over on the west side. It was a really rough day, and there was a fishing vessel called 90% Angel, and we were fishing in the area. And it was a boat that fished for the same cannery that I fished for, that my father fished for. I was his crewman. And we remember hearing over the VHF that there was an emergency, a vessel emergency, and lo and behold, we were there. And it was a real snotty day. It was really swift, and tide was just slamming over the bar, and we were in the middle of the bar with them. And my uncle squirted his shaft out of his boat in the same area. So we got net aboard and hauled over there. But at the same time, this other boat, the 90% Angel, likely in panic mode, was trying to get their net off the bar. And the water was just real choppy. It was, when you're out there, it's a different feeling entirely. And when you know that you're in a high-risk situation like that, it's the emotions of the moment really catch up to you, and making sound decisions a lot of times goes out the door. I'm not saying that they did, but that boat capsized, and that they lost that crew. And I know that the owner of the processor of the cannery that I worked for, he was out there looking in his helicopter, and I believe he found them. He located their bodies on the flat. But I remember thinking at the end of the day, to be honest, the scariest feeling in the world is watching the Coast Guard plane fly over you. That's the scariest feeling in the world.
Something bad's happening.
It's imminent. Something's going on, and you just say a quick prayer that, There's other things. Like I remember watching 2 spotter planes collide.
What?
On the west side.
Let's hear that.
Dino De Laurentiis' son was doing a a documentary. The plan was for him to do a documentary about the Bristol Bay fishery, as I understand it. I might be wrong, but I recall that it was his son in this airplane, and they collided with another plane. And we happened to be there. I mean, we heard it hit the water. We had our heads down. We were fishing, picking fish, and we heard this big bang and then a slam, and then next thing you know, we're looking at a tail sticking an airplane tail sticking up out of the water. And we motored up to them. We were one of the first 3 boats that were there, and somebody had tied off the wing to their boat, and there's nothing we could do. They perished.
What year was that?
Gosh, that had to be I would say 1989, maybe 1990. My memory escapes me there, but the act or the actual moment of all that is vivid. I mean, I could see the colors.
I'm seeing it right now.
Yeah, I could, the smell of the salt water, and then the muddy salt water on the west side. I just vivid like it happened yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, but those scary moments. Yeah, seen a couple of those.
Any other ones you want to share?
Just fishing in the rips over on the west side on a really bad blow, and tides ebbing out. On the west side, it's a 3-knot ebb, and you get a southeast wind, real short, choppy seas, and watching waves come over your stern as you're trying to pull net in. It's a pretty intimidating feeling.
Yeah.
You think you're in control until something like that, till you start becoming subject to an environment like that.
Nature
You
takes it
realize,
away
oh
from
my gosh, you realize how vulnerable you really are. Doesn't matter how equipped and state of the art you think your vessel is. If you're in a hairy situation like that, you got to make sound judgment, and sometimes it's got to be quick, and things like that.
What about your best times at sea?
Best times with family.
I knew that was going to be
Yeah,
the answer.
from my fishing with my grandmother as a child, we'd go down on 3-wheelers onto the beach. I was in charge of driving down the old Big Red, and my grandma would be in her Toyota pickup, and we'd get down to the beach. We'd pick net, going out on the water with my father. My father fished company boats for a number of years before he bought his first custom craft, fiberglass boat, old fiberglass boat.
When you say company boats, what do you mean by company?
He had the NN51, which is Alaska Packers Association. He had CWF 23 for Bumblebee Seafoods, Pen 4 for Peter
the
Pan.
canneries owned the boats?
Yeah, at that time. That was.
And then you just kind of leased it out from them?
Yeah, 30%. You rented the boat from them, and then they gave you an option to buy after a couple of years, and my father would sell. We eventually purchased a 1978 Ohima called the Homeward. It was the first Homeward, and fished that until 1998, I believe, and then we bought our first big Queejack, 94 model Queejack that we purchased from one of the owners who had fished it for 2 seasons and then leased it out. The guy he leased it out to, he was like a kid with a brand new set of Mustang keys, and he just treated the boat really awfully, and my father picked it up for a song and a dance, paid cash for it. And my dad, who had gone from fishing on these company boats to the old Homeward, old cable controls, and just old style boat, much older style, prop driven. He'd gotten into this big Queejack, 650 horse lugger engine, all the bells and whistles at the time. Think of 1994, what that technology was like. Color tube screen plotter, it was like looking at a little TV, color TV with the old tube screen, things like that. My dad hated it. He absolutely hated it. He could not drive that thing. We'd come in hot to dock, and Lord forbid if you happen to be the guy that we were tying up to, if my dad was driving, he'd come in and he landed that. He planted those threats. Yeah. Anyhow, my dad did it. He fished it for 2 years, and he says, "Hey, this is not for me, and I'd like you to take over." And I did. Took over the Homeward, and I fished that up until 2019. We decided to build new, and we did. Built a much larger jet boat. Spent a lot of time designing it with the fabricator and the architect, and kind of came up with a design that I liked. And there's this thing called New Boat Blues. It lasts for about 3 or 4 years, and lo and behold, this is our 4th year. And I think I finally got the boat that I really had hoped for. Now that all the bugs have been worked out, I got one gremlin left, and I'm pretty sure we got it knocked out this year.
Good.
So
Good.
yeah.
Well, I hope it's a great season for you.
Oh yeah, we're looking forward to it.
What do you feel like the sea has given you?
Well, treasure, absolute treasure. Everything that I have in my life is really part of the culmination of Bristol Bay's commercial fishery. When my grandfather came here to Bristol Bay, to this side of the Alaska Peninsula in 1912, they fled the eruption of Mount Novarupta. They ended up in an abandoned settlement that's a few miles upriver from here called New Sevenoski. That was 1912, and I believe that cannery across the river at that location had been constructed sometime in 1899 or something, somewhere thereabouts. Okay, somebody in my family virtually has been at that particular plant, that particular cannery, from the advent of its creation. And I still have family that fish for the owner of that processor, for that cannery. And when I say that everything that I have in my life is a result or a reward from this fishery, I mean that, because it is cultured values and disciplines, personal disciplines that have impacted my other business. We have a consulting business in Anchorage. We work with a number of Alaska Native corporations, federally recognized tribes, and municipal governments. Everything that I have is really goes back to the elements of what I learned as a commercial fisherman. Yeah. Yeah.
What is it taken from you? What is the sea taken from you?
Oh man. Well, I've got children. I've got 5 children, 4 daughters and a boy. One of my kids was born June 24th. When she was born, I was tied up to a flat scow in the middle of the Naknek River, and I wasn't there for that. We named her River Bay, and she's my 15-year-old now. But the morning that she was born, I got the call from my daughter, who was there, one of my older daughters, and got to hear her cry, and that set the day. I went out to Hungry's, slapped it out, found a rip there, and pulled up 4 bags of fish, and that was it. I had a moment. I had like 2 minutes of teary joy moments, and then boom, back to business.
Back to business.
Yeah, and
I love the name River Bay.
Yeah, thank you. It's it's what you have to do. You have to buckle down. It's fishing is like, sometimes it's like going to war. You just got to do it. We've had family members pass away, and in the middle of the season that we couldn't we couldn't bury because we were out fishing. Things like that. Friends pass away that died in the middle of the season that we just had to put our head down and grind through it and deal with the emotions afterwards.
Well, the salmon aren't going to wait.
They don't. Well, my grandmother had this saying, fish don't run in the winter. You can sleep in the winter. That was part of that's part of the value that she instilled in us as children. Because, as a child, set netting on South Naknek Beach, 5 to 11 years old, that was really difficult work for a kid, getting up at 2 a.m. and donning all of your set net gear and going out there. Back then we didn't have the fancy vinyl gloves that we have now. We had canvas gloves, let me tell you, man, the water is ice cold when you're just a kid and you're hauling fish up and down the beach there. And
boy, the fish are cold too. You put your fingers in the gills and you can just get
51 degrees.
Cold,
let me
cold,
tell you,
cold.
yeah. And as a child, that was just part of. That was the work environment that we partook in as a family. The teaching began with my grandmother and my grandfather, and it was something that I will never lose sight of those lessons and those values. The things that my grandfather and my grandmother taught me. Taking care of what you have and making sure that those who are with you are taken care of. How I take care of my crew today is a result of how my grandmother nurtured me to be who I am today. She did the same thing. She made sure that I was taken care of and did her part to made sure that I came back the next year. Good hired help. I'll tell you what, the first paycheck I got that I remember getting I must have been about 7, 8 years old. It was $1,500 as a 7, 8 year old. And I'll tell you what, that was the start of the gold rush in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is when I absolutely knew the value of commercial fishing. It wasn't just going back to the village and living that cultural heritage that my family partook in. It was, I realized then the economic value of commercial fishing at 7 and 8 years old. It bought my hockey gear for me because I played hockey and, as a child throughout my life and put me through college. Helped me raise my children. Helped us buy multiple permits and build a boat. My children have had the opportunity to see these things unfold, and through hard work, through dedication, through the love of what we do, I don't know anything else. I don't think I want to know anything else. My wife teases me all the time that sooner or later we got to think about retiring, and I think, man, I got about 10 or 15 years in the easy. I'm 52 years old.
Energy. I can still get on the boat.
The old timers. There were. I remember the old timers that fished at the cannery. The old Croatians, the old Athabascan Indians that come down from the Iliamna Lake. They're 75 years old, and their crewmen would literally tie ropes around them and pull them up the ladder as they kind of Spider-Man'd up the ladder because they were old, decrepit old men. I of course, God willing, I won't. I'll recognize when my time comes and my son has his opportunity. But there's nothing like going out, onto the fishing grounds. I go out there and I hunt for 2 or 3 hours before we set that net, and it's very, it's a very predatory thing. It's an instinct. I go out there and I would say 50% of the thrill is that hunt, spotting fish, looking for sign, and the other. And I have dreams about this. I can literally see this in my mind, but watching my net, just slam, sink, and it's a calling. It's instinctual. I don't know anything else. I don't think I want to know anything else because.
Well, you were brought up that way.
Yeah.
As you were brought up that way, you were just born into it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to people who weren't born into it, who would like to do this? What would your advice be to them?
What we do is nothing like you've ever experienced. It's nothing like you've ever seen on the television. This isn't Dudley's Catch. It's not Animal Planet's Cowboys of Bristol Bay. That's all for show. What we do at our level as owners and operators is, it's our life's investment. When I built that boat, I put my life's retirement into building that 2020 build. What every nickel, diamond, penny that we saved as a family went into that build. And these are $1 million boats now, which blows me away. My dad, bought the first Homeward for $30,000, and it was only 2 years old. It was a, beautiful boat. Had a 61A Volvo in it. We went 340 horsepowers and maybe went 50 knots wide open, and then we bought the Homeward, which was a major step up, the second Homeward. And, a part of his life's investment went into that. I told you he paid cash for it. That wasn't a small feat for him. At the time, mid-60s, and, deciding to do that. He did that to perpetuate what we do here. Mm-hmm. He did that to perpetuate a lineage of commercial fishing. And now we're doing the same thing for our family, our son, and the daughters as well.
What would you say to people who are just trying to get in? Have an interest in doing this?
Do your due diligence. You need to research and invest just how costly and expensive partaking in this fishery can be. Crew for a couple of years, crew for 5 or 10 years. Get to know the elements of the fishery.
It would be super dangerous for someone to come up here, buy a boat, and not have any experience. That just wouldn't even be.
It blows me away. I'm actually trying to help a young man who lives in Florida who got into this fishery 2 years ago. He bought a boat, an old banged up boat, and he put 50, 60 grand into it trying to make this boat fishable. And then last year happened. 50 cents a pound. He lost everything. Young man out of Florida, 25 years old, just a kid. And he called me up this winter, said, "Hey man, I'm in a real bad way right here. I really need to get rid of this boat. I need to get out of this debt. Can you help me?" And it's a relentless situation for him. He made some what I consider to be poor business decisions. And as a result, he's suffering the loss of those financial burdens now. And he has an asset that he likely won't ever be able to get rid of. Yeah. So what I would, my thought is, if you're going to get into this fishery, know what you're doing, know what you're buying into.
I certainly think you need the crew first.
Absolutely need the crew. My father had this saying, your boat, your season is only as good as your crew. Absolutely. Good captains will go out and they will always find fish. It's the captains with the crew that get that second, third, and fourth set in, while everybody else is still working on their first or second set. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys who really come out on top.
Yeah.
And that's why taking care of your crew is absolutely important. Making sure that, even the guys that don't come back, you develop a reputation. Hopefully it's a good, positive one. People know your boat. People know your name. They want to come fish for you. And we absolutely make the concessions. Good crew costs money. You can't cheap out on good crew. You can't cheap out on crew, period. You can, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you your reputation, and you likely won't have any good streaks of good luck, Yeah.
Well, Brad, I can't thank you enough for coming by, but before we go, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share?
This fishery is something that is intrinsic into my life, into many friends and family who still continue to participate in this fishery in their lives. Our fish are an incredible natural resource. They are beautiful. They're beautiful things. A part of me as a commercial fisherman, there's the greed that drives, but then there's the compassion of what we are doing. The impact that we're having, not just on the environment, but on the resource. We're putting a massive dent into the resource. The state of Alaska does a pretty darn good job managing the fishery. We know where our fish are when they're in state waters, but let me tell you, once those fish hit international waters, they are open target. We need to figure that out because, our Chinook salmon are taking a massive hit. Nushagak, I used to fish Nushagak. That was my first part of the season stomping grounds was to go over there and then to come back over here, wait for the Kvichak to open up. I'm terrified to go over there now because of the Chinook salmon situation, the conservation issue. You know, we need to start paying attention to what's going on out there. And I'm talking out there as in international waters outside of Alaska, outside of our management area. But yeah.
If everybody managed their fishery like the state of Alaska does for all fisheries, it'd be
California would still have, you know, optimal fisheries, Pacific Northwest, Canada.
Pacific cod
would
still be in existence.
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah. Even the Atlantic salmon
Atlantic salmon.
Atlantic
salmon.
Yeah.
The only one of those you can get is farmed.
I know, it's crazy. You know, the guys in it was Nova Scotia, or the guys who still gill net. You know, they go out for 4 fish a day now. You know, which blows me away because where's the return on that? You know, at that point, you're self-made and you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the lifestyle. A lot of times, I've lived through 4 of these economic crashes. You know, I call them economic crashes, where our fisheries have hit that downturn. And I'll tell you what, it's the lifestyle that drives me, that keeps me in it. When I hear my friends tell me, I'm out, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. You
that
know,
doesn't click with you. You're
no,
like, this is my life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love
there
this.
There are bad years. But there are some good years.
Oh man, let me tell you, we, you know, years like last year where there was, I mean, just amazing amounts of fish in production, and then the return coming in so low. I mean, it was not so much disheartening to me and my wife, who's my business partner as well, but you know, having to break it to the crew. You know, we're transparent. We show them the catch log. We show them the expense log. You know, we make sure that everybody has a full understanding of what the cost of operations is. And, you know, crew appreciate that. They love the transparency. But at the end of the day, in a season like last year, where you had all that hard work, all that production, all that poundage, all the blood, sweat, and tears, and then at the end of the day, when it came time for payday, it was just, it was so gut-wrenching. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Brad, again, thanks for taking the time to come in and talk to us.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Good luck on your 2024 season.
Oh, you bet.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Galley Stories. We hope you like what the net brought in. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Whether you like it or not, we're not fishing for compliments. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter too, and reach out to us at galleystories@gmail.com.